get a chance? So he has to go through management to see people.
It depends on Trishan Gibbons of my promoter.
We'll look at everything, man. You know, we were the mandatory for this. We earned it. We got here. We beat Gary. But the problem is we gave him a rematch. I don't know what year it take place. He only fights once every 1 year, 2 years. So shit, maybe 2 years from now we'll give it to him. Yeah, no problem.
Coming into this fight, Gary mentioned that he had an injury. Were you aware of what his injury was? Were you aware of the injury?
I'm just following my training camp, boxing plan. So we just follow that plan. I don't care what it is. He's talking.
I'm going to clarify Gary's injury. His injury was Mark Magsayo. He made predetermined excuses because he'd been out of the ring. He hadn't fought. He had no problem with his shoulder. He was doubling up on that shot that he was throwing at Mark. So I love Gary. He's a lovely fellow, but no excuses, man. Mark beat him fair and square.
1 to 2, 3 rounds. He's just punching the left and right. But I get him hurt in the right arms in the fourth round, so that's why he got hurt.
He hurt it during the fight. He wasn't hurt coming into it. When Mark punched him, that's when it hurt.
Yeah. Did the injury actually throw you off and make you like maybe a little bit overexcited to try and finish him?
Yeah, but his speed is a good footwork, so he overcome my power.
Those are the words of Mark Magsayo as him and his promoter discuss rematch. They talk about the injury of Gary Russell Jr. and all that jazz. As you guys can hear and heard, you know, him saying that, hey, we'll give it to him when he comes back. Well, that's an acceptable answer because Gary Russell is no telling how long he will be out. And based on how he fights, he does have that hanging over him. That was one of the problems. He does fight once a year. Now, as far as him saying, oh, man, that was nothing, it was an excuse. Like, okay, you can't have it both ways. Okay, one guy said, oh, no, he was punching fine, he was doing the 1-2. No, he did not throw the fucking punch. He only threw the left hand, right? So don't try to, you know, say what you didn't see, you know, or say he did something that you know you didn't see. He didn't do that. Now, Magsayo then turns around and says, well, you know, he hit with the punch. You know, it wasn't Mark hit him. No, it wasn't a punch at all. You know, he threw a right jab and he hurt it, just like Mark Magsayo said. And he said, well, he hurt it in the fight. Okay, well, is he either hurt or he wasn't? Which one was it? You see what I mean? And if he was or if he wasn't, like I told you guys, if he was already hurt, he shouldn't have had his ass in there. If he got hurt in the fight, he still got hurt. That's not an excuse. You could see how Gary Russell was fighting, that something was wrong with his arm. Something was wrong with that right hand because he didn't throw it. He didn't throw any jabs, so it must have been something where, you know, this magnitude of, you know, of pushing and pulling. You know, that's what you have to do when you're throwing a punch. So, you know, bottom line, that's what happens. But like no excuses. It's like, dude, you've seen how he fought. As far as a rematch, though, like they said, he's the mandatory. He really technically doesn't have to do that at all. Now, the only question you ask yourself politically, did Gary Russell Jr. burn his bridges? I mean, let's be real. You got an undefeated guy. And I think they were pushing for him to beat Gary Russell. Gary Russell was that guy. He was the resistance. He didn't fight a lot. You know, he had outside other problems. And, you know, so, you know, it was time for him to go. So they pretty much, you know, it pretty much went the way they wanted it to go. Mark Magsayo, though, he said he gives, you know, give him credit. He was fast. You know what I mean? He was really quick. He was fast. But at the end of the day, Mark could not execute a game plan. You know, he could not adjust to one punch. Gary Russell was either throwing the straight right or he was doubling up on the left. He was doubling up on the left, or he would come under with an uppercut. You know, and then he would wait for the counters, move, then he'd counter. Do, then he would counter. He would do that, and he did that the majority of that fight. And Mark Magsayo, he's not the next Pacquiao, man. I'm sorry. He's not. You know, I'm thinking it will be like Ledwaba versus Pacquiao, where Pacquiao went in there and strong knocked him out, ran right over him. He's not that dude. You know, and definitely Gary Russell is not Ledwaba. I think that's better to say before you get, oh, you know. Well, you know, he's supposed to took out a one-armed guy. You know, and I know his promoter, you know, he wanted to, he didn't want to bring up the injury that much because then there would be no excuse on why Mark Magsayo couldn't finish a one-armed guy. But then he already did because his fighter, in fact, let him out of it. You know, so I think at the end of the day, Mark Magsayo, it wasn't a robbery. It was close, but I'm disappointed in his performance. He should have done more. And I think in time he needs to give Gary Russell Jr. a rematch because Gary Russell Jr. is that guy definitely that we want to see with two working arms. Okay, I want to see how that fight plays out. But anyway, you guys tell me what you think of Mark Magsayo and his team clowning Gary Russell Jr. Of course, please subscribe. And you guys been Counterpunch. Peace.